Hello and welcome everyone to this course. I am Dhruv Bas and I will be showing you how to create a simple but effective e-commerce support bot. So what is this bot going to be able to do? You will be able to get messages from n8n's native chat messaging website. You will be able to get messages from your own custom Telegram bot. So anybody can message your bot from their Telegram app on their cell phone. The AI agent itself will be able to answer questions based on information we've provided it. So we have placed some product information regarding the different products that our store services, and we have descriptions, we have the discounting, we have other things like the policies according to each product. And you'll also be able to connect to an external data source, which is this Airtable over here, and be able to get the order information that is associated with a customer's order. And then, of course, you'll be able to send that back to the customer, depending on whether they message from Telegram or whether they message from the n8n's native chat messaging app. So I hope you guys are excited to create your first AI agent. This is something that's very powerful, and it is something that it lays the foundation for building some of the more complex things that are yet to come. So thank you so much and see you in the course. Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Here I'm going to be walking you through the n8n workspace, and we'll be focusing on the most important settings that are necessary to get started, and we'll leave some of the advanced stuff for later because it's not really that useful to us. And one of these things is the manage tab here, where you can sort of upgrade your executions and the number of active workflows you have. So you can take care of that in the manage section if you wish to. But let's get started and go over to our workspace. All right, so in the workspace, we have a horizontal row of tabs and a vertical column of tabs. Let's get started with the horizontal row. And here we have the most important thing, which are our workflows. And in here we have 3 workflows, of which one of them happened to be active. So the difference between an active or an inactive workflow is that A, you have a limitation on the number of workflows you can have active dependent on the plan that you're on. So you can't have, say, for example, more than 5 on one of the plans, and that means that you can't have more than 5 of these that are active simultaneously. However, you can have multiple workflows which happen to be inactive, or just something that's in the works or in development. That's no issue at all. And the difference between active and inactive is that with active workflows, you have a link, which is say a webhook via which the workflow can be activated, or you have other mechanisms that are inside the workflow that automatically trigger that workflow to get activated. However, in the inactive workflows, you don't have that trigger. So, or that trigger will not work. So if you try to go and access that webhook, that is a production webhook versus a testing webhook, it will not work in these 2 workflows. However, it will work in the outbound system workflow. So let's take a look at the outbound system workflow. Now, at first glance, this might be a little overwhelming, but to be honest, once you guys get a hang of all this, building stuff like this will be super, super easy, I promise you. So let's just take a look at the general idea of what's going on here. So I have divided this into different sections. The first section over here is our lead capture into CRM that essentially captures leads into our Salesforce CRM. Then we enrich those leads that we have inside our CRM. Once we're done enriching them, we then qualify them and score them. And lastly, we do our cold outreach, which is that we send a personalized email to that specific lead. So let us go over to the first one of these. And let me just give you an idea of what's going on here. So again, within the different stages or different steps of the outbound system, we have different components that we have built out. And these are not actual components. It is more or less just a logical division that I've done. But making sure that your workflows are divided like this and commented is super, super important in making sure that you can maintain them and come back to them in the future and change them. So the first step of this workflow is importing the leads from the Google Sheet into our CRM. So here we have a Google Sheet module. If I double click into this, you can see that we are getting all the rows from this new leads sheet and or new leads document. And then we have sheet one as the sheet. So we're getting all the rows inside the Google Sheet. And this is called a node. So we have a workflow, which is the entire sort of execution flow that is going to happen when our trigger is triggered from here. And then we have the different nodes through which the execution will flow as it picks up data along the way and makes modifications to it. So once we import all the data from our Google Sheet, we do some modification, or we actually have a loop. So you have multiple different rows. You want to go through every single row. So you have a loop. And then you sort of do some modification on the inputs. Then you insert only the unique leads and you create a new account in the CRM if the company account does not already exist. And here's basically part two of it. And this is going to, once it has completed these steps, it's going to go back to the loop and then pick up the next record and the next record and so on and so on. So if you didn't totally understand that, that's totally fine. I just wanted to expose you to how one of these workflows looks like. And we'll be building, things like these and, maybe even more complex than these in the course. So don't worry about that. But this is just an idea of how a complete system sort of looks like. Now let's go back to the home page. So we took a look at the different workflows. We are going to go over to credentials. So what exactly is a credential? Now, when you create the different nodes, as we saw in the workflow, and you remember that we had a Google Sheet node, you want to be able to log in to your Google Sheet account. And that's essentially what the credential is going to take care of. The credential is going to be, the API key or the service account or, some code or some password, whatever it is going to be what allows you to get access to that specific account. And we have multiple of these different credentials. We have Google Sheets credential, we have Salesforce, Brightdata, Google Drive, again, Notion, and so on and so on. So you need each one of these for the different services or the different nodes that you're going to be having. Now, usually you don't create credentials through here. Usually what happens is you just create them while you're working inside the workflow. But having a tab to see all the credentials allows you to very easily come here and sort of delete additional credentials that might be confusing you or might not be necessary because, as you can see, a lot of these, and sometimes you might have multiple ones and you might not know which one to use. So you can very easily come here and manage all of them. All right, let's go over to executions now. And executions is essentially a log of the different workflows which were executed. So you can see we executed a lot of these outbound system workflows. If I click on the first one of these, and this is a successful execution. So if I click on view, this should bring us to the execution. And in the execution, what we'll essentially see is a snapshot of the data that flowed through the workflow. And in this case, we had data flowing through only this specific section. If I go to any other section, you can see that the connectors, the pipelines or the pipes here are all grayed out, which means that they weren't activated. So if I go over to this lead enrichment section, you can see that we have our nodes and the connectors in between all in green color, which means they indeed did execute. Now, why is this actually useful to us? What's the purpose of seeing an execution like this? When you're going to be working with n8n or even software in general, what happens many times is that things don't work in the first go or in the fifth go or in the 10th go. And you sort of need to be able to see what's happening to the data so that you can make adjustments and make sure that the workflow is working correctly. And part of that is coming over to executions and seeing what data is flowing from one section to another section. So if I double click here, you can actually see the data that came in, and you can also see the data that went out. Now, you can also take a look at the settings that were there, and you can see that how we're not actually able to edit this. In the actual workflow, we can edit this, but since this is a snapshot of the execution, we wouldn't be able to edit these values, but we will have access to the values that ran through the workflow. And this is super useful, as you can probably tell, in finding the errors and fixing them. So that takes care of executions. Let's go back. And okay, so that takes care of the top row over here. Let's just go through a couple of these. We can see that we have a plus sign, which allows us to create workflows, credentials, or a project. And I almost never use this, but it is good to see that we can create a project from here, and we can also do that from here. Now, the reason why you might want to create another project is because if you take on multiple clients, you want to be able to separate their workflows and their credentials from each other. Because what will happen is you will have, client A's credentials getting mixed up with client B's credentials, and that's obviously going to create a huge mess. So you can very easily just create a new project right here. And here I'm just going to just say my project client B. Save. And here we have our project, and we have our workflows, which actually none of them exist, obviously, because this is a totally new project, and we have none of the credentials carrying over from the personal project. All right, so that takes care of projects. Let's go over to the first one of these. And this is essentially going to take you back to where we came from, which is the dashboard. So that takes you back. That is the admin panel. So now if we go back into the workflow, let's take a look at the next one of these, which is templates. And this honestly is super, super useful because the way they've made it is very easy to copy paste the templates into your own workflow. Let me show you what that means. So if I click on AI, and here you can sort this by relevancy. So when you search, you can get more relevant results and so on. So here they're showing you how to create a short video using OpenAI. But if you sort this by popularity, which shows you what is something that a lot of people are using, and you click on one of these, for example, click on Explore. This window over here is not just an image. This is actually a sort of embedded workflow. And if you double click on any of these, you can actually see the values. You can edit them, but you can actually see the values already placed inside them. And here again, you can take a look at, let me click on another one. Okay, here you can see again, they have these values already preset. So what this means is when you say select all of this, hit Control C, you can have the entire workflow be copied. And when you go over to, say, a new workflow and do Control V, you can actually paste the entire thing inside your workflow. And this is super, super useful because sometimes you will get stuck and you will not know how to solve a problem. And you can very easily reference the 1,000 or the 1,500 templates that they have and basically copy piece or entire workflow itself and paste it into your workflow and start tinkering with different pieces of it or just to get an inspiration of how other people have solved the same problem. Now, what will not be copied over is that the licenses and the credentials, which is obvious, right? Because they won't want you to be using their API, they want you to use your own. So that is the use of templates. And we have a couple of these other ones which are not as useful. We have variables, which is essentially a way to set global variables, which are going to be accessed through a execution of the workflow. So essentially, say you want to, you know, save a file name, for example, file1.pdf, or you have a specific website that you want to access and you store that as a variable, and you don't want that variable to be edited, but you want your different workflows to actually use that variable. You can put that inside the global variable. But I rarely use this for my workflows, and it's not really something that you need to worry about at this point. For help, you can come over here, and it seems like they have some documentation, a forum, courses, and so on that you can check out as well. So if you ever need help, you can check it out here. And if we go over to the last one of these, which is the updates, the only reason you would really want to look at this is to make sure that you're not sort of falling far behind in the version. So if you see this version, falling far behind, you can take a look at potentially testing out the new versions to see if they will work. But I will advise strongly against just going and changing the versions willy-nilly, because what can happen is that if you upgrade to from say 1.77 to, I don't know if they come out with 2.1, 2.5, what will happen is sometimes your workflows will break down. And before you make the change from one version to another, make sure you note down the exact version that you had beforehand so that you can revert back if necessary. So that's about it that you need to worry about in this updates section. And yeah, the settings over here are much more advanced. They're really not necessary to get started, so we will be skipping them over for now. But that is all you should need to know to get started with n8n. There's one last tip that I'll give you, which is to make sure you continuously save your workflows before exiting, because this has happened to me before. And what can happen is you work for an hour, you go, and maybe your computer shuts down or you close down the browser for some reason, and you come back and realize that your work did not save because you did not hit the save button, and now you've lost an hour's worth of work. So thank you so much for joining here, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Here we're going to be getting started on the creation of our AI agent. And we are actually going to dive right into the creation of the agent, not really worry about any of the other, basic things like if-then statements or loops. We will get to that later, but I felt that the reason why you guys have taken this course or are interested in using n8n is to work with AI agents. So this is the first thing I want to show you guys so that you get a little bit of interest in learning the rest of the things as well. So let's start with the first step. The first step in any workflow is usually to add a trigger. A trigger is what starts your workflow. And these are the many different ways that you can start a workflow. You can come to the workflow, double click on it, and that will manually start the workflow. We rarely use this, but it's usually used for testing purposes. The on app event, so there might be an event that happens inside, say, your Telegram app, which is somebody sending a message to your bot. So that can trigger your workflow. You can trigger it on an interval. So maybe you want to check your email every 15 minutes for a certain type of email that might come in. In that case, you can run your workflow on a schedule. You can run it so that another application can send or can trigger your workflow via an HTTP request. So you can run it on a webhook call. You can run it on a form submission. So if you have a lead submitting a form and you want to quickly qualify that lead and capture it into your CRM, you can run this on that. You can actually have your workflow be executed by another workflow, which is a sweet little feature. And you can also run it on a chat message, which is what we're going to do here. So let me click this. And we don't really need to change any of these settings currently. So I'm just going to click out of it. And here, oh, by the way to move around in the canvas, there are a few very useful features. One of them is if you press in on the scroll button and then you drag it around, you can actually move around the canvas very nicely. And you can also hit Control and you can zoom out or scroll out, and that will allow you to zoom out of your canvas and move it around. Okay, so with that, let me hit save. Let me just click hide and then click chat. And here I'm going to say, hi there. Sweet. So let's just see what happened there. And here we can see that the output from this trigger is the session ID, which is actually super useful because when we have multiple conversations happening at the same time, we want to be able to identify which chat input came from which conversation so that we can store it in the right location and we can respond to the right conversation. Obviously, we don't want to have any mix and match going on over there. So this takes care of that issue. Then we have the action, which is send message. And then we have our chat input, which is hi there, which is what we typed in. Okay, let's come back. And now we're going to add our AI agent. We can do that via here. We can do that via here. We can also right click and add it in. All of these are valid, but the easiest way here is to just add it to our chain. So here you can see that we have a bunch of different activities or a bunch of different categories of nodes available to us. And we will definitely go through a lot of these. So don't worry about that. But the main thing I want to show in the beginning is how to add an AI agent. So we are going to go over to the advanced AI nodes first. So inside the advanced AI nodes, we have a bunch of different types of agents available to us. Let me just go through a few of these. So we have the AI agent. The AI agent is the one we're actually going to be using. So the AI agent is able to obviously have a chat model that is required for all the agents. And this is where you're able to decide which type of model you wish to use. You can see you have a lot of different choices: DeepSeek, Anthropic, Gemini, which is one of the fastest models out there right now. And then you also have your OpenAI chat model. You can store the chat messages according to the session ID. So memory will actually take care of storing the messages very efficiently for you. And then you also have tools where you're able to, call other n8n workflows. You can use the Pinecone vector stores, which is how you can do RAG, and we will cover that in much more detail in the future. And you can do other things as well alongside that. So this is why the AI agent is super, super useful, because once you connect these different tools together, it is able to create the logic that is necessary to utilize them and answer the customer query without you having to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So let's just take a look at what other AI agents were available as well. So if I go back here, we have the OpenAI node. This is specialized for OpenAI specifically. And usually I don't end up using this because we're able to do much more with some of these other nodes. We have a basic LLM chain. Basic LLM chain is going to only have the model. It's not going to have memory or tools. Let's go back. We have the information extractor. So this is utilized when you want to extract information from a text and you want the output to be in a structured format. So here you have a similar structure as the basic LLM chain, but when you go inside, you will see that you have a place to paste your text in, but you also have a way to get this data in a very structured format. So for example, you can say company underscore name, you can give it a type, and then you can give it a description for that attribute, and you can extract that information from the text, and it will be outputted very nicely for you. Let me add another one of these. Okay. So you have a question and answer chain, which allows you to extract answers from the retrieved documents. That is going to be utilizing your Pinecone vector store. You can get some sentiment analysis on your text. You have a summarization chain. And lastly, you have your text classifier, which is going to allow you to classify your text, which is actually very useful for doing routing types of calls. So if I click on this and you want to classify your text, maybe the user has said, okay, I want to understand where my order is. Say you have an e-commerce store and you have a chatbot for that. The user might ask where my order is, and they might have a variety of different ways of describing that question. They might say, oh, I haven't received my order. They might say, I want to know the location of this order. And they have very many unstructured ways of asking that question. But you only want it to be classified into maybe 2 or 3 different ways. One is, okay, I want to cancel my order. The other one might be, I want to know where my order is. A third one might be, okay, how do I use my product? And you can classify the input into one of those 3 outputs and then have different workflows to deal with each of those. And that's where something like this is going to be very useful to you. All right, so let me actually just get rid of all of these. And let's stick with our AI agent. All right, so the AI agent that we have here is connected to our chat trigger node, and the prompt or the user message is automatically inputted from the chat input node. All right, scroll down, and here I'm just going to add a system message. So let's go here, and instead of this, we are going to say something like, you are a customer support agent for an e-commerce store. Please help answer the customer's questions. So if you have used ChatGPT before, or if you have used any of the AI platforms, you are able to set a system message, which is essentially instructions to the system. And it's not something which is part of the user input. The user input is separate, but these are the instructions which you give the system, and these are combined with the user input to produce the output. Now, there are other options that you can set as well, like max iterations, return intermediate steps, and so on, but we wouldn't really worry about those for now. These are sort of useful when you have a multi-step processes, so that you can set a maximum number of iterations you might want, and you might want to see the result of the intermediate steps. Okay, so let me just come out of this, and you can see that we have an error. The reason for that error is because we don't actually have a chat model attached. So if you take a look at these, and if I just scroll in a little bit, let me hide the chat window, you can see that we have a asterisk next to the chat model, which means that we require a chat model for this AI agent to work, whereas the memory and the tool are not required, but they're optional. So let's get started with adding a chat model to our AI agent. There are multiple different models we can choose from, and since most of you guys will be familiar with OpenAI, we'll just go with OpenAI. So here what we get to do is we get to create our credential. And in order to create our credential, we will need an API key. Now, if you have an OpenAI subscription, so whatever the $30 plan that they have, that is actually not going to give you an API key. That is the B2C, the consumer product that they have. In order to get an API key, you actually have to go over to their website, openai.com, hit login, go over to API platform, which is different from the ChatGPT. And the API platform is where you will be able to get your API key from. Now, if you have not created an account before, you can obviously go and create the account, fund it with like $10, and it will take a long time for that $10 to deplete. So don't worry about using that up too quickly. And once you've done that, you can come over to API keys. And here you can create a new API key. So I'm just going to call it n8n course. And all right, that's totally fine. Okay, I'm going to create this API key. And don't worry, I will be deleting this API key once I'm done with the course. So there we go. So I've copied the API key. And let's come back to our n8n workflow. Okay. And we can leave all of the rest of the stuff as it is. Hit save. Sweet, so we have created that credential for us. Let me get out of this. All right, so now you can see that the error that we were experiencing earlier has disappeared. All right, so let me hit save. And now let's do a quick little chat. Let's say, and actually I want to reset this. I don't want to continue the session. All right, so now we have a totally new session going on. I'm going to say, hi there, can you please help me with my order? Sweet, so we get a response. It says, of course, I'll be happy to help you with your order. Can I get your order number and details? Let's make up some order number. Let's say order number 1192. Okay, how can I assist you with your order 1192? I would like to get my shipping status. Interesting. So as you can see over here, we gave our order number 1192, and it mentioned that it has picked up the order number 1192. But now if we go back and we say, okay, I would like my shipping status, it doesn't have that information because currently we are not storing any memory. So that is what we're going to cover in the next video, how we can add memory so that our chatbot is actually able to keep track of this information and not have to ask our customer again and again. But that's our first video, and congratulations, you have actually created your first AI agent. So I would be pretty happy about that. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to be continuing where we left off with our AI agent. So if you remember, we were trying to chat with our agent, and we realized that it is not storing any of the conversation that we've had so far. And obviously, that is something that we would like to keep because sometimes the user might give us some information that we might want to use again without having to ask the user all over again. That doesn't create a good customer experience. So let's see how we can do that. And the secret to doing that is inside the memory section over here. So to give it memory, all we have to do is just provide it this window buffer memory. We can provide other ways for memory as well, but for our simple case, we just need to provide the window buffer memory. Okay, so the input will be when a chat message is received. It is going to store the session ID. So I had mentioned that the session ID is very important, and what this will do is it will maintain a different memory for each session ID. So if multiple people are talking with us at the same time, the messages don't get mixed up. And we have a context window length, which is how many of the past interactions the model is going to store for each session. So let's give it a go. Let's take a look at what this is able to do. So I'm going to say, hi, I would like to know my order status. Okay, scroll up. So it's asking for our order number, and I'm going to say was 9123 was my order number. Okay, so in this case, it says I don't have access to live order data. However, you can check the information, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. So the main thing we wanted to test was whether or not it is able to store this data. So let me go ahead and ask that. So I'll say, what was my order number? And if it has been storing that information, it is indeed going to return that to us. And you can see that we have this return to us over here. And you can see that it utilized this window buffer memory tool in order to be able to do that. So if I just minimize this a little bit, and if we go over to window buffer memory, you can see that it inputs the customer chat message. And the output over here is that it saves the context and it stores it inside this chat history slot. So inside here we have 0, we have 1, we have 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let's take a look at what each of these conversations are. So 0 is a human message. So this was a message sent from our customer saying that the customer wants to know the order status. Now the next message was an AI message saying, sure, we can do that for you. And then there was another human message, 9123 was my order number. Then we have the AI message saying it's not able to do this. And now we're asking back for the order number. And finally, it is able to get that order number for us and present it. So that's essentially how the memory section works. Now, I also want to take a look at how we can pass in some data to the system, so to the system message, and then have people be able to query against that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this website called dummyjson.com. And this sort of mimics the format in which you might receive data from an API. So if we click on, say, products, you can see we have a bunch of data over here. In order to be able to see it properly, we're going to pretty print. So you can see that this is a bunch of products that are inside the e-commerce store. The first one of these products being this one over here. So this goes all the way down to this point. And how I know that is because we have another ID with ID number 2 and the information for the next product below it. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at what's inside. We have the ID number, we have the title, description, the category, the price, so on and so on. So now what we're going to do is we'll just copy paste all of this. Let's do Control A, Control C, come over to our agent, and I'll say, based on the data available to you below. So this is a super simple example of giving it some form of data. Obviously, we'll be seeing how we can use PDFs and so on in the future, but this is a very simple example of doing that. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to reset. So let's just reset all of this. Save real quick. It will still work if you don't hit save. It's just a habit that I like to keep so that the work I've done doesn't disappear because I go to a different window and close this one. So let me go over here and I'm going to say, hi there, what are the beauty products that you guys offer? You can see that it's working away because the number of tokens we're sending in is quite a lot. Okay, so here you can see we have the following products. We have Essence Mascara Lash Princess, which, if you remember, was the first product that we sent in over here. So we have this product over here. It's providing a description, the price of the product, the rating, and so on. So this is essentially how you can provide some information and have the chatbot or the agent utilize that information to answer questions. Okay, so that takes care of our basic AI agent. Hopefully you guys had fun building this. And there is one more thing that I want to show you guys before we call it a day with our AI agent. And that is that how we can swap out the AI chat model very easily so that we can test out different large language model providers. So here I'm just going to delete this connection, and I'm just going to deactivate this as well. So that's deactivated. And here I'm going to add Gemini. Now, if you guys don't want to pay for another API, then you can just watch this video and you don't necessarily need to follow along. But if you guys want to try out different APIs, then feel free to follow along with me. So this is where you can add an API key for your Gemini account. And the way you do this is by coming over and searching for Google AI Studio. Click on Google AI Studio, click on Get API Key, and then you can click on Create API Key. So I'm going to select one of my projects over here. Now, if you do not have any of these projects showing up, it might mean that you haven't set up your Google Cloud. And if that is the case, just go over to Google Cloud and go over to console. And you might have to do some setting up process, and they'll most likely have a walkthrough for you to be able to do that. And then most likely you'll have the ability to create a new project if there already isn't a default project. And you can do that very easily by doing this here. So let me go back. And since we already have the API, we're just going to create a new API key. Copy that. And actually, I believe that they provide some sort of free access as well, because I believe that some of these are on the free plan. So yeah, actually, you should probably try this out yourself, because I don't think this might cost anything unless you really start using the API heavily. So let me paste this in. Let me hit save. Okay. So let me just close that, come back over here, and now I'm going to rerun our chat, reset. And again, this time I will say, what are the grocery products that you guys have in store? Okay. Let's make sure that we select the correct model here. So let me go up to parameters. And inside the chat model. So we don't need to do anything inside here. We just had to make sure we select the correct model. So here I'm going to select our Gemini 2.0 Flash. So there we go. Okay. All right, now this should work for us. Let me just reset. Say, hi, what are the grocery products you guys have in stock? All right, fantastic. So here we have a list of all the grocery products that are available to us. Now, the key thing to note here is that all you had to do was change out this subnode, and you didn't have to do anything or any changes to the root node or any of the other subnodes in order to essentially swap out the LLM model. And that is the advantage of using n8n, because under the hood it is using LangChain, where it's the model that is being used is an abstraction, which means that it can very easily be switched in and out with different models. So if one of these goes down, or you want to test something else out and compare the latency, you can very easily do that. Okay, so that's essentially all I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope it was helpful to you guys, and I hope you guys had fun creating this AI agent. All right, see you guys in the next one. Hello everyone, Dhruv Bas here, and today I'll be showing you how we can use Telegram as a medium for sending and receiving messages from our AI agent. So if we take a look at what we have currently, we have this chat message received trigger. So if I actually convert this into an active workflow, and then if we, I got it. Okay, now if we go over to there it is. So if we make this publicly available, it will give us a website. You can copy that website, and we'll leave the authentication as none for now. Now, if I go over here and I paste this in, okay, 1 second, just save this, reload. Okay, there we go. So this is the standard sort of chat window that is available to you without making any changes. So if we just test this out, I'm going to type, "Hi, can I get some help with my order status?" Okay, fantastic. So it's returned this message to us. And if I go back here and if I just double click on this, okay, those are the test ones. So let's just go over to executions. And the execution, this is the latest execution that went through. Now, if I just click on the message received, there we go. That was the message we sent. And the AI agent created the following output for us. And that's what's being displayed on this chat. Now, if we don't want to use this, or for example, we want to use multiple avenues, we can actually very easily set that up. And if I go over to editor, what essentially you do is you create another node and then just connect it to your AI agent, and then it will send that information back out the appropriate channel. So let's go ahead and do the setup of the Telegram app in this video. And then in the next one, we'll see how we can connect it to our AI agent and have it work alongside the chat message received. So I'm going to right click, add node, and I'm going to search for Telegram. And here we're going to do get a chat. All right, so in order to be able to do this, we need to create a credential for Telegram. So how exactly does Telegram work? It is like WhatsApp, if you've ever used it, and it's essentially a messaging app where you're able to message your friends or you're able to message your bots. And in this case, we are going to be messaging a bot. And in order to create that, you can do that via your phone, but I would suggest just going over to telegram.org and downloading the Telegram app for your PC or your Mac, and then doing the changes in the app because that makes copy pasting much easier. Okay, so I've already done that, and I have my app open over here. So let me go over to the full version of this, and I'm going to do step 1, which is to search for BotFather. So BotFather is what will let you create the different bots. You can see I was playing around with a bot just now to test out the functionalities I'll be showing you guys. And the way that you get started is by saying /start. That should give you all the commands that are available inside this bot. You can see we have new bot, which is to create a new bot. We have my bots to check out the bots that you already have, and you can edit your bot settings, so on and so on. So here I'm just going to do my bots just to show you guys how you can access the bot once you've created it. So I have one bot over here, I have another bot over here, and since we want to create a new bot, we're going to go over to /new bot, and after we're done creating it, it should show up inside my bots. Okay, let me do /new bot. And now it's saying, what do you want to call it? We will call it something like ecom, and we'll have to give it a special name. So actually, let me just call it ecom support and see what happens. Okay, so the requirement for this is that it has to end in a bot. So if I do ecom support bot, now the issue will be that the username is already taken. So let us call it something like, actually, if you remember, the first product was something related to eyelashes that we worked with in the previous video. So I'm just going to call it long lashes support bot and hope that nobody has taken this name. All right, fantastic. So I have taken this name. I'm sorry, you guys can't take it anymore, but I'm sure you can add a couple of numbers in between here or come up with your own name that you can utilize. So this is all you really have to do in order to create a bot. And I'm going to come over here and copy this. So that copies the information we need to create our credential. We have our access token. We can leave this as is, hit save. Fantastic. Okay. So now I'm going to go over here and actually I just realized I did something wrong here. We're not trying to get a chat. We're actually trying to create a trigger. So that is something that I just realized. We are trying to create a trigger. So we're going to do add trigger on app event. And here we are trying to have the Telegram app. So here we're going to do, okay, on this, on message. So we want to trigger on message. So we're just going to use the credential we just created. So we don't have to do anything there. But now we're going to make it so that it triggers on a message received. So here we have different ways we can trigger our Telegram application, and the one that we want to use is message, because this is when you have a new message. If we go for edited message or any of these other things, the chatbot is going to have a little bit of issue, and it's not impossible to deal with it, but we just don't need it right now when we're getting started. So that takes care of the trigger on. And if we look at any fields, we don't really need to download any images or files, since this is just an ecom bot to get more information on where a specific order is or get more information on a specific type of product. Okay, so that's that. Let's get rid of this one over here. And yeah, that should be triggering whenever we get a new message. So in order for that to work though, what we'll have to do is we'll hit save over here. And we don't necessarily need to be active, so I'm just going to turn this off. And over here, we're just going to click on test workflow. Okay, so it's currently waiting for a trigger event. And you can actually trigger via chat message or via Telegram trigger, which is very convenient because you have now a single workflow which can be triggered in multiple ways. So in order to trigger this, I'm going to go over to Telegram, and inside Telegram, I'm going to go over to our long lashes support bot. Let's go and start. And here I'm going to say, can I get some info on my order? Okay. Obviously, we're not going to get a response because we haven't hooked it up to our AI agent yet, but it seems like this ran. So let me double click on this. And let's scroll down. Let's see where our message is. Okay, so it's not showing the message in here. It's all right. Because what happened is when we sent /start, so when we started the bot, it read that as the trigger, and then it stopped any further triggers. So when you do a test workflow, it just runs until you trigger the workflow once. So that's why we didn't get any response over here. which is actually a good thing to point out in a tutorial like this. So in order for this to essentially listen to the responses and listen to multiple responses, we do have to make this active. Although now that we have started it, it won't have that same issue again where we click start and then it stops the further executions, because now it is going to be taking one message at a time. But let's just make it active so that we don't run into that issue and we can send multiple messages. Okay, so now that it is active, we don't need to do test workflow. We can go over here and I'm just going to say hi there. Hi there. Okay, so now inside executions, we should be able to see the latest execution. So let me go over to this execution. Okay, and I'm going to double click and let's scroll down. You can see text hi there. So we got the latest text message. So this is working correctly now. All right, fantastic. Let me just send another message to show you guys that we don't actually need to manually test our workflows. From now on, since it is active, it will just listen to the messages. So this time I'll say, can I get some info on my order? And you can see that automatically we have the next execution come in, and we didn't actually have to actively, test or manually do anything. Now, if I double click on this, you can see we're getting the text, can I get some info on my order? All right, so that is where we're actually going to stop in this video. And the reason for that is it's actually a little bit involved to connect this to our AI agent. And it's got something to do with the session ID. So thank you for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, everyone. Dhruv Bass here, and I will be showing you today how we can connect our Telegram trigger to the AI agent. So what this will allow us to do is it will allow us to send messages via Telegram to our AI agent and then also reply back to the user that has sent the message. Now, if we just go and connect this like this and save, do a test of this, and let me just type something simple like hi there, come back here, you can see that there is an issue that comes up. And the issue is that there is no session ID found. So the way that this AI agent, or not the AI agent, but the Windows buffer memory works is that it was expecting a session ID to be passed in from the previous node. Now, when we have a message sent from the chat message, in this situation, it does send a session ID along with it, but our Telegram message currently does not send that information. So how do we remedy this? The solution is quite simple. You just add a field in the middle and then provide the necessary information in that field and then pass it along to the AI agent. So let's do exactly that. I'm going to get rid of this error message, and here I'm going to add a edit fields. So this is, you can just search this, or you can go over to data transformation, and inside here we have this edit fields node, which allows us to essentially take in data from the Telegram trigger and sort of pick out the important pieces of information and then sort of relabel them so that the AI agent and the Windows buffer memory can understand them. So let me connect this to this. And what am I going to type inside here? I'm going to say add field, and the field that I'm looking for is, or rather the field that I want to output is going to be session ID. And the session ID is going to be inside the chat ID. So this is the input that we get from the Telegram trigger. The Telegram trigger passes us the following information. We have the update ID, message, chat, date, and text. Inside chat, we have the ID, which is the chat ID, which is the same thing as the session ID. So here we have dragged the ID over and dropped it inside the appropriate section. And you have to make sure that you have selected expression, not fixed, because fixed will just read this as text. But in order for the green sort of highlighting to show up and to be recognized it as code, we have to make sure that the expression section is selected. Now, what exactly is going on here? So this is actually very important and a very important piece of how we pass data along to the next node and how we utilize that data. $JSON refers to the input data that is coming in from the previous node. So the input is on the left side, the output is on the right side, the processing happens in the middle. So whatever's coming in the input inside this brackets over here, which is the array. So whatever's coming inside is going to be inside this $JSON. So this is the object that contains this entire information. Now, if we want to get the information that is inside the message, so in order to go one step inside this, so each of these are hierarchies, right? So this is the level 1, say. At level 1, we have update ID. And on the same level, we have message. And then on the same level, on the same level, we have, actually, no, we only have two of these. So we have on level 1, update ID and message. Now inside message, we have another level. So inside level 2, we have message ID, we have from, we have chat, and we have date and text. So message brings us into level 1. Chat brings us inside level 2, which is inside our chat section. And then now within the chat section, we're looking for the ID. So ID gives us this value over here. Now in this situation, it was very easy to just drag this and drop it here. But in the future, we'll be working with code sections. So places where we'll be writing JavaScript code, where it is very important to understand how this hierarchy works and how you can access the different pieces of data that are inside this object. If you want to learn a little bit more about objects, we will cover that in the future lectures, but you can look up things like dictionaries and JSON objects inside JavaScript. So that should give you a very good idea of how these work. So that takes care of the session ID. Now let's also add another field. And then inside this field, I'm going to call this chat input. Okay, this is going to be a string, and this is going to be the text. So you can see how in this example, we went in one level. So we went to message. So message was on level 1. We went inside message to grab text, which is in level 2. So now that we have the text and we have the session ID, we can essentially just come out of this, hit save. And now let's try the same exact process again. So again, I'll just say, okay, this time I'll say something else. I'll say testing. All right, okay, there we go. So this time it executed successfully. And the reason for that is when I go inside here, you can see that the input was session ID, the following session ID, and chat input was testing. So what essentially happened here is we got some data from the Telegram trigger. We discarded a bunch of the useless information. We grabbed the useful information, which is just 2 fields for us. And then we sent that along to the AI agent. And the AI agent passed that information along to the Windows buffer. And then it was able to produce an output. Let's just take a look at what the output was. It just said, testing is a go. I can hear you loud and clear. How can I help you today? So very simple stuff. Now, the next step, obviously, is going to be to pass this information back to our Telegram. The way we do that is by having a send message. So we're going to have a send message node, which is going to be allowing us to send a message back to Telegram. So I'm going to search for Telegram. And we want to select the Telegram node, not the Telegram tool, because the Telegram tool connects to the AI agent. And even though we can probably configure it this way, but there are some changes that we still need to make, and there are some other things that I'll be showing you in the future which will not work if we just assign it as a tool. So let's select the node, and we want to send a message. So we want to send a text message. Okay. The credential is auto-selected, just totally fine. We have message, send message, and let's make sure we connect this first, because otherwise it won't have the information that's necessary. Okay, so we have output. The text is going to be the output over here. So this just takes the output from the AI agent in the previous step and pastes it into the text. Let's get the chat ID. Now the chat ID, if you remember, was not something that was outputted by the AI agent, obviously. What it was outputted from was the edit fields section. So this is where we had set the chat ID, and we called it session ID, but this is where we had set it. So we are actually able to go back to the previous nodes and pluck data from there and paste it into our data fields. So now if I paste this session ID from the previous section, you can see that automatically it shifted from fixed to expression, and it's grabbing the data from this specific node. It's going to item, JSON, and then it is grabbing the session ID. Okay, sweet. So that should solve the problem. Now let me do test one more time. And this time I am again going to say, hello there, what's up? Oh, fantastic. So actually, it sent the message directly inside Telegram as we expected, but it's having this little text over here saying that this message was sent via n8n. Let us get rid of that. So in order to do that, we go to Telegram, and then inside here, we add a field. And the field that we add is append n8n attribution. And we actually turn this off. Okay, let's test that. I'm going to say testing, testing. I know it's pretty unimaginative, but I'm keeping it simple for a specific reason. All right, so here we've got the data, and we have that this was sent automatically with n8n. And the reason why I'm keeping it simple is because sending data in Markdown or HTML back to Telegram is actually not as straightforward as it might seem, because there are some issues with the conversion from the AI agent, what the AI agent thinks is Markdown, or what the AI agent uses as its HTML tags, and what Telegram allows, or what Telegram thinks is Markdown. So that is a little step that we still have to do, and that is something we will take care of. But for now, we have a end-to-end sort of loop working here, where we're able to send messages via Telegram, and we're able to get replies back. And I would actually test this on your phone itself, because so far we've been using the Telegram app on our desktop, but the real fun is in actually using the phone and getting responses back. It's really, really cool. And, please feel free to play around with it. Now, what's left that we have to still take care of is that this part is no longer going to work, because now what we've done is we're ending with a Telegram node. So what was required for the chat message to work was that we need to end with a node which outputs text. So that is what we're going to take care of in the next video. But thank you for joining me here, and see you guys. Welcome back, everyone. It is Dhruv Bass here, and in this video I'll be showing you how we can make our Telegram questions much more complex. So in the previous video, I'd shown you how we can have an end-to-end chain where we're able to send a message from our phone, and we're able to get the AI agent to process that message and actually send a response back that is visible from our phone. So that is, in my opinion, the first time I did that, that blew my mind, that I'm actually able to create a bot that easily and have it sending messages and accepting messages from my phone. Now, there is an issue with this, and let me show you what that issue is. So if I go and do test workflow, and let me come over here and I'm going to ask it, what are the grocery products that you have in stock? Not a complex question, but let's take a look at what it does. All right, so fingers crossed this broke down. All right, fantastic. So what is the issue that we're getting here? If I double click into this, you can see that it says bad request can't parse entities. So let me go and click on this one over here. Gives you the same exact sort of description. And the issue that is happening over here is that the output that we get from our AI agent happens to be in Markdown. And Markdown, if you guys are not familiar with it, is a language or is a way of outputting certain characters alongside the actual data you want to display. And they allow the browser or the application that's displaying that text to add some kind of formatting. So things like these asterisks, or sometimes you have two asterisks by surrounding a word, for example. It's not here in this case, but in many other situations, it usually has that information. But if you have that, maybe that means that this text is going to be bolded. Something like this means that you're going to have a bullet point, so on and so on. Now, the issue that Telegram is having is that it is not able to read this because A, we have not specified the parse mode to be Markdown, and B, because the Markdown that our AI agent produces is not the same kind of Markdown that Telegram expects. So even if I make this Markdown legacy, it will work in some examples, but it will break down in other examples. So to solve this issue, what we have to do is we actually have to make our parse mode in HTML, and then we have to go back over to our AI agent. So inside our AI agent, we are going to add a section here, which is going to tell us that we have to use HTML in your response, no markdown. And there's also one more requirement, and only use the following HTML tags. So Telegram has another sort of stipulation, and that is that you can only utilize the following tags, and they happen to be these over here. We can ignore the tag over here. You don't really need to worry about that, but these are the main important tags that we're able to utilize. So I'm just going to paste this here, and then that should take care of creating our output, not in this format, but in HTML format. And that HTML format is then going to be sent over to our Telegram node, which is then going to parse that HTML and be able to output the response from the AI agent in the correct way. So let's test this out. I'm going to save this and let me just reload this. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to do test workflow. And this time I'm going to basically copy paste the same question. And fantastic, so that actually ends up working. So we have the following items that are in stock. Okay, so let me get back over here and let's see what's going on. So this time around, what's happening is we have our data that was outputted from the AI agent in HTML format. So we have the B tags over here. So this is very nice. It actually ended up creating our output exactly as we wanted, which is good. So that's a quick video on how to use prompt engineering inside our AI agent to produce output that is exactly what is expected by our nodes. And in the next video, I'm going to be continuing down the process of making our AI agent more multi-channel. because currently we are only able to send and receive messages via Telegram. The chat message route is no longer active. So I'll catch you in the next video where I share that. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. This is Dhruv Bass, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how we can make the output of our AI agent multi-channel. So far, we have added 2 channels, and this could be some other channel. This could be a BotPress integration into your WordPress, and you would have to manage different ways of accessing this same AI agent, and then once the processing is done, be able to route the responses back to the correct locations. So let's get started with that. And let me first demonstrate the issue that we're having. I'm going to actually click on this chat message. So I'm going to try sending a chat message. I'll just say testing. I'm going to press enter. And there we go. So we have an error. What exactly is this error? So the issue that's happening, let me just close down the chat window. The issue that's happening is that we are referencing certain values that were defined here inside our Telegram node, which, to be honest, should not be executed because the node that we executed, the trigger that we executed here was the chat message received trigger. So if I double click here, you can see that this is fine. So this was generated by the AI agent, which is totally fine. And you do have access to this, but this is not available because we never executed the edit fields node. And that node is executed only when we get a Telegram trigger. So how do we deal with this issue? The way that we deal with it is by having a if node that is going to check to see if our Telegram trigger was indeed executed. So I'm just going to do add. Since since our if node is going to alter the execution flow of our workflow, it is going to be inside the flow category. And here I'm going to select if. So the value that we are going to be checking, and this time since we haven't executed our Telegram trigger, it is not going to be available to us. It's very easy to just go and send a message via Telegram and have that data available to us. But it's also good practice to know how to write these out as well, because you will be using the coding module. And in the coding module, you're going to actually be writing code and accessing those values manually. So let me just type that out. And here, what I'm going to say is I'm going to have our curly braces. So we'll have these curly braces over here. I'm going to have the $sign, and then I'm going to have parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, I'm going to say Telegram trigger. I'm just going to do the tab that should autocomplete. Okay. And here I'm going to do dot is executed. And again, I'm going to autocomplete. So I'm going to press tab. And this over here, I'm going to change to Boolean because is executed takes either true or false values. So you can say is true if the node is executed, false otherwise. So that is the Boolean kind of variable. And a Boolean variable only takes a true or a false value. So here we're going to say is true. Now, what exactly is going on here? So we have this Telegram trigger node, and that is the same node that we have defined to trigger the workflow if a message is received from Telegram. So that is executed. So, sorry, if that is executed, this value becomes true. And then you check against this condition over here, you check to see if this value is true. If it is true, and only if it is true, then you're going to send a message back to Telegram. So if I save this, go over to chat, and do testing, we should not have an error. We should have a different problem, but we should not have that error. Okay, fantastic. So this time there is no error because we never executed this Telegram node. We never sent that message back. What we are experiencing though is that we are not having any output over here. And the reason for that is our chat message actually requires that we output our output in a certain way, in a certain format. And if that reminds you of another node that we utilized previously, you are exactly correct. We are going to use that same node over here. So I'm going to have edit fields. And here I'm going to say output. And this is going to be output. Now, I know it seems a little funky. Why do you have to call this output if this is already output? But there is a difference between a if node and our edit fields node having an output called output. So it's just one of those things that, the API and the service requires in a certain format. So you just have to make it in that format. Okay, so that takes care of that. Let me hit save. And this time, let's go over to chat. So I'm going to do, hi, give me the in stock for beauty. And this should be interesting, the output of this. So there we go. And you can see that we have the output. However, we have these tags over here as well, which we were not expecting. And the reason for that is the output from our AI agent happens to be in HTML instead of Markdown, because that is what works for Telegram. So to fix that, what we can do is we can convert or have that be converted to Markdown before we send it out. The way we do that is that we just add a Markdown. So this is a conversion. And if you're thinking that this is this is annoying to convert data from this format to another format, trust me, this is like 70% of the work, or 80% of the work is making sure that data goes in and out from one node to another node in the correct format. And guaranteed you'll be using these and reusing these nodes over and over again in your projects. So here I'm just going to come in, and the HTML is going to be the output that we have. And the destination key, we're just going to call this output, because that way we don't have to change the edit fields. Okay, so now let's take a look at saving this and going over to chat and copy pasting the previous message. Okay, there was some problem with parsing. I think the copy pasting for some reason gave a little bit of an issue. I'm just going to hide the chat, or I'm just going to reset this. Okay, here I'm going to say, hi, please give me the grocery items that are still in stock. Okay, sweet. So this time we get our data like this as we expected. So that is perfect. So now we have things working from the chat window perspective as well. And let me just make sure that nothing broke down here, which, it shouldn't have happened anyways, but let's just make sure that our Telegram is also working correctly. I'm just going to activate this real quick. And now I'm just going to go over to the Telegram, and I will say, what are the beauty products that you have in stock? Fantastic. So we have our Telegram working, and since we activated it, I just want to make sure that this will work in production. So I'm going to click on our chat message, go over to the chat URL, paste this in here, press enter, And I'm going to again ask basically the same question. Hi, what are the beauty products in stock currently? Okay, so we have the following beauty products. We have eyeshadow, we have powder canister, red lipstick, and red nail polish in stock. Sweet. So now we have two channels working for us, and that's honestly a great achievement on your guys' perspective. And you have a very sort of complex AI agent working for you currently, and we're only going to make this more and more interesting, more and more complex. So thank you so much for joining me on this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, everyone. This is Dhruv Bess, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing how we can connect our AI agent to an external data source. The data source we're going to be exploring is going to be Airtable, mainly because this is a very popular tool that a lot of small businesses use. So if you are serving small businesses, then this is going to be super, super useful to you, whether it's for lead management or for managing orders or inventory or whatever it is. It's a tool which is pervasive across the industry. So if we take a look at the agent we have here, what I've done is I have actually added some comments, which makes it super easy for us to come back to this in the future and understand what we built. And let's just go through it real quick. So we have some details about our ecom bot. We have the incoming messages that are coming from Telegram or chat message. We have our AI agent, and then we have outgoing messages in this section. So far in the AI agent, we have been providing information through the system message, which has some information we pasted in using the JSON format. Now, this is not essentially the correct way of doing things, but we did it because we wanted to test out the AI agent capability first. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start providing information for the order status and the order details through Airtable. And I would have liked to create a RAG system for providing product information and store policies as well, but we're limited a little bit by Udemy's 2-hour restriction on free courses. So I'm going to focus on the highest ROI activity for us, which is to connect it to a highly popular data source, which is, as I mentioned, Airtable, and do something interesting with the order status and the order details part of an e-commerce bot. So I'll leave this information in here for now because this doesn't actually carry any info about the order status. So we can still get some information on the products that are inside the e-commerce store, but we're going to head over to Airtable, and we're just going to create a new workspace. So, or actually, sorry, I'm going to create a new base, and the base I'm going to call database. Not very imaginative, but the customer is probably just going to call it database or orders or something like that. And here we're not going to do anything. We're just going to leave this be. And we're going to import the data in here using a CSV file. So I've actually written down some prompts or a prompt with some instructions that we're going to use to generate our data. So the way the prompt is structured is we have the AI generating 25 records for us, and the columns that we have are order number, order details, the order date, and the order status. So the order number is just a random 6-digit integer. For the details, we have multiple different products they might have bought. So we have separated each product that they might have bought with a semicolon. And we have separated the quantity that the product might have been purchased for with a space. In order date, this is in standard US date format, and the order status is either they've just placed the order, they have shipped, or the order has shipped, or the order has been delivered. So the final line in this prompt is that we want this to be output it as a CSV file. Now let's hit submit. And fantastic. So they have provided, or Gemini has provided the file as a CSV file. Now there is a possibility that you don't get this kind of an output. So it is possible they might have given you the output as a table where you can copy and paste it. The best way of dealing with that is just copying that data, coming over to any text editor. So I would have used Cursor or VS Code, but you can just search for Notepad, paste that in, and then save that as orders.csv. And then from that point onwards, you can do exactly what I'm doing. So I'm just going to download this. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add or import, say, CSV file. We have orders.csv. Let me open this, upload this file, and I'm just going to create a new table because that way it will just pick up the column names as well. All right, so here we have order number. Let's just make sure everything's correct. Okay, details. It's a long text. Okay, that's also good. Order date. That's picked up as date. That's good. And order status, single select, solid. And the different statuses are delivered, shipped, delivered, placed. Okay, so everything's looking good to me right now. I'm just going to click on import. So here we have a new table. We'll just get rid of the old one. And I'm going to rename this as orders. Okay, let's save. All right, sweet. So we have a table over here inside Airtable, and it looks like all of our data is exactly how we want it to be. So that's perfect. So this is how you can import or create a table in Airtable. And, this might look exactly like Excel to just a fancier version of it. And, maybe it kind of is that, but there are a lot of automations that Airtable allows, which make life a lot easier for, automating business processes. So that is why it is heavily used. And I'm actually going to leave you guys here in this video. Now that we have a database, in the next video, we're going to be connecting to this database and importing that data into our n8n workflows. So thank you for joining me here, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how we can integrate the Airtable into our n8n workflow. So if you guys remember, we created this table in the previous video where we have the order number, details, date, and order status. And in this video, we're going to figure out how we can get all of this data inside our AI workflow. In order to do that, we have to come over to n8n. We have to add a new node. And this is going to be our Airtable node. Now, there are a lot of things that you can do in Airtable. You have the ability to check out your database and to figure out the schema of your database, which essentially means you're able to get info on the different tables that are there and to get info on the different columns that are inside those tables. Now, in terms of record actions, this is where you're able to manipulate the actual data that's inside one of your tables. You can create a new record, you can update records, delete records, get, search, and update. So those are the functions you can do inside a table. And then you can also trigger your workflow on a new Airtable event. What this means is if you insert or if your customer inserts a new row into their Airtable, you as the automation engineer can then activate a workflow in n8n that will do something with that record. So for example, if there is a new lead that was inserted, you can have a workflow which is going to send a welcome message to that lead. So that is an overview of what is available. Let's go ahead and click on search records. So search records is going to allow us to get multiple records from our Airtable, and it will allow us to filter them down by a certain formula. So let's create our credential so that we can connect to our Airtable. The preferred method for doing this is using an access token, mainly because it is much easier to set this up. To create our access token, we're going to go over to airtable.com/create. You don't even need to type this out. This should bring you to the Builder Hub where you can create a personal access token. So I'm going to go over and click on Create Personal Access Token, and I'm just going to call this n8n course. I'm going to add the scopes to be read, write, and we should also be able to read the tables from a schema. In terms of which bases we want to give access, we're just going to give that access to our database. Okay, let me just make sure that was all we needed. So if I scroll down, read, write, and read again from the schema. Okay, I'm going to create our token and make sure to copy paste this token into a safe place because this is the only time this token is going to be displayed to you. Now, if you do indeed lose the token, it's very simple to just come back, delete that token, and just create a new one. So now that we have our token, we're going to go over to our workflow. I'm going to paste it in, hit save. And now let's see if this actually worked. So when we go over to base, this should load in our database. Perfect. And then tables should give us our orders. Okay, sweet. So I'm going to leave everything as is. I'm going to hit test step, and this should give us all the items inside our Airtable. We have 25 of them, and we can see we have order number, details, date, and order status. Now, if we want to play around with some of these options, we can do that as well. So here we can say we want to download attachments, which we don't have. We can select the output fields, which we do have. So we're going to say select just the order number, the order details, and the order status. So we'll skip over the order date and let's see if that is reflected correctly. Sweet, so now we only have the order number, details, and status shown to us. Let me change this to a specific limit. So what we can also do is many times you might have, say, like 1,000 records in a table, and you don't want to display all of them because that is going to be putting a serious strain on your memory and your storage. So many times we have this limit because you don't even want to accidentally have that be triggered, even though you make sure that, oh, I'm going to filter, oh, I'm going to do this and that to restrict that. We still make sure that we keep some sort of a limit that is going to avoid our system from accidentally crashing just because from some loophole or from some edge case we ended up extracting 1,000 records or 10,000 records. So here I'm just going to limit this to 10 to see if this is working correctly. You can see that we have 10 items, and I'm just going to make this 100 records so that we are safely extracting data from our table. Okay, so that takes care of these options. We can also sort our data. So here I'm just going to sort by our order number. I'll just make this ascending. And you can see that we are sorting in an ascending manner. So all of this is fine. We don't actually need all of this for our example. What we actually need is the filter by formula. So here I'm going to show you how we can filter by, say, the order status. So here we're going to do order underscore status, and very easily we're just going to say this should be equal to placed. So we're going to look at only the ones that were placed, not the ones that were delivered or shipped. Okay, so that is 9 items. We have placed, placed, placed. All of these orders were placed, not delivered or shipped. Okay, so let's now look at how we can restrict it based on the order number. because this is actually what we'll be doing in our tool when we connect it to the AI agent. So we'll say order number is equal to, let's just paste in one of these. Okay, so that returns a record. So there is our order, which matches this order number over here that we have placed. So that takes care of a lot of the basic actions that we can take with Airtable. If you want to explore some of the more advanced filters, you can just come over here and open up the more info, and that should give you sort of a reference guide for all the different things that you can do. And I'll just show you one of these so that you have an understanding of how you might go about implementing these. So here we have some of these text functions. You can concatenate multiple data values, but what we're going to do is we're just going to implement this find function, which might actually be useful to a customer because they might want to find and figure out which orders contain a specific product. So for example, if we go over here and if we replace this with find, we might want to know which products contain a hair mask. So here we have hair mask, which is what we're searching for. And then we have where we want to search that, and that is inside order details. Okay, so let's just make sure that this is indeed correct. So we have string to find, where to search, and this is optional. So this is going to be by default 0, and we're totally fine with that. We just want to look inside the entire string. Okay, so let me go back and here let us do a test of this, and let me make sure we don't have any other restrictions. We don't. Sweet. So let's go ahead and do a test. Let me go over to the side, and you can see that we only have 7 items returned, and each one of these has hair mask inside the string. And you can see it doesn't have to come in the beginning of the string. It can come in the later part or in the middle as well, and it will be able to find it. So that concludes our video on the basic manipulations in Airtable. In the next video, we're going to be showing you how we can connect this to our AI agent so that we can start answering questions like, what is going on with my order number, the order status, what all did I order, and so on. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. This is Dhruv Bes, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can connect your Airtable to the AI agent. So in the previous video, I showed you how you can integrate your n8n workflows with Airtable. Now we're going to go one step further and add it directly to our AI agent. Now, if I click on this plus button, that should allow me to add an Airtable tool. So let me click on the tool over here, and here we have the credential already loaded in. Let's scroll down. Now we don't want to get a record because what we need is a record ID in order to be able to do that. So this is different from the order number because the record ID is something that is unique and assigned to each record inside Airtable, and it follows this specific format. So since we don't have this, we're going to do this the usual method, the method we saw in the previous video, by searching for our records. Now we're going to go inside the database, and we are going to pick up the orders table. Okay, so let me scroll all the way back up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we are provided the order number every time the AI agent calls this tool. So let me go over to tool description. Instead of setting this automatically, we want to set this manually. And this is how you describe to the AI agent what this tool does. So let me describe this right away. I'm going to say that this is used for getting order information when the user provides an order ID or an order number. The tool expects the order number in a variable called order underscore num. Okay, so we have our variable order underscore num, and now we can utilize this inside the filter by formula section. And what we're going to say is we're going to say order underscore number, and this order number refers to the table over here. So it is going to be comparing against the values inside the order number column is equal to, and here we're going to say, we're going to give it the curly braces. So first let's switch over to expression. And here we're going to be accessing the dollar from AI, and we're going to be accessing the order underscore num variable. And this is the exact variable that we set over here. All right, so where am I getting this dollar from AI? If I scroll all the way up, you can see that this is the method by which we can get the data that is extracted from a user conversation by the AI model and given to this tool. Okay, so that takes care of that. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come out of this, and actually I'm just going to set a name for this, and I'm going to call it get underscore order underscore info underscore tool. Copy that, rename. Okay, and then inside here I'm just going to make some updates. So here I'm going to say if the user provides the order number, please use the to get the order information. Else you can use the following information. Okay, so this just instructs our tool to get the information from our Airtable if the user is providing us an order number. Okay, so that should work. Let's go over to, just save real quick, go over to chat, reset, and here I'm going to say, hi, can you help me with my order? Scroll down. Okay, fantastic. Could you please provide me the order number? My order number is, let's select one of these at random. Let's go with this one over here. Let me see. My order number is the following. Okay. Now you can see that this time around, we actually had our Airtable being accessed. And if I scroll down, just go up, you can see that we have our order number, the order date, the order details, and the order status all returned to our user. Now there is an issue of these backtick HTML and backticks over here. The reason for that is because we were getting output from our AI agent in the HTML format so that we can output it correctly to Telegram. So what we have to do is we have to go over here and just replace these with an empty space and replace these with an empty space, which we can do in a different lecture. But right now, the most important thing for us was to get this working. And we indeed are able to extract data from our Airtable, which is an external database, using our AI agent. And by simply providing an order number, we're able to get all of these details. So that's super, super powerful. And congrats on being able to build that. With that, I will say thank you for joining me, and see you in the next lecture. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how we can make sure that the output we're getting from our AI agent, which happens to be in HTML, is being correctly displayed to our chat message. Because there was an issue where when we converted to Markdown, it has this very annoying string, which is this backtick HTML string, and then we have 3 backticks at the end of our message as well. So this is an example where we're going to be using the coding module. So don't worry, I'll be walking you through exactly how to use that. And the coding module is actually super, super useful, and it gives you way more flexibility in something like n8n versus something like in make, where you have to find other ways of doing coding. But it is something which it gives you a lot of flexibility for transforming your data into different formats like we're going to be doing right now. So I'm going to add this coding node. And here, we don't really need to worry about any of this. So I'm going to get rid of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say console.log. So essentially, console.log allows you to print out variables that are inside your code. And otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see anything that's happening inside this section. This is like a black box. But if you print out certain variables, you can see the values of those variables. And the way we do that is by doing console.log. Okay, so here I'm going to say before. So this is before we make any changes. And then I'm going to say $input, and I want all of that input. Okay, so I'm just going to come out here, and I'm going to go to chat. I'm going to say Control C, paste that here, and now let's take a look at what happens. Okay, so we can see we have that backtick again. I'm going to do right click. Make sure not to right click on the canvas because that's not going to give you what you're looking for. So I'm going to right click, go to inspect. And inside inspect, I'm going to go over to console, scroll down, and you can see that the object that comes into the node looks like this. So what are the different levels inside this object? So on the outside, we have our array, and then inside the array is where all of the different objects that it stores, or the different items that are inside our object, are stored. So inside the first item, we have level 1, where we have JSON, that is an object. And then we have another item, which is called parent item, which stores the information on which item this is. Okay, so this is level 1, where we have the actual item, then we have information on the item, and inside JSON, we have output, and this is what is being sent in from the AI agent. So the main culprit that we have here is these values over here that are being added to the beginning, and then these values over here that are being added to the end. So I'm just going to copy this over. I'm going to Control C, and then I'm going to go back here, just hide this chat, come to this, and before I use that value, I'm going to say let AI output. So let is how you define a variable. AI output is what I'm calling it. So I'm going to grab the first one of these. So I'm going to grab the first item that is inside the $input. So if you remember, there is only one item. And since there's only one item, we don't need to subset or do anything fancy. We can just say $input dot first. So that gives us the first item. Now let me go back and show you something. So if I go to the object that we have, $input.first will give us this first item. If we want to get JSON, we'll have to say .json. And then if we want to get the output string, we were going to have to say .output after that. So here I'm going to say .json, and I'm going to say .output. Okay, so that should give me the AI output string. Now I'm going to just do a quick replace. So I'm going to say AI output dot replace, And what am I going to replace? I'm going to replace the string I had copied earlier, and I'm going to replace that with nothing. Okay, so here again, I'm going to do the same thing. Say AI output is equal to AI output dot replace, and this time I'm going to copy paste that, but just get rid of the HTML. And here I'm going to replace that again with an empty string. So that should take care of the string that's appearing in the front like this, and then the latter part here should take care of this portion. All right, so let's go down and let's do a console.log of the after to make sure that we are indeed getting the correct output. So I'm just going to say AI output, and let me just type in after. All right, that looks good. I'm going to leave this for now. I'm only going to change this once we have confirmed that our AI output looks good. So here I'm going to just quickly hit save, chat, just copy paste this over. Okay, so obviously this won't have changed because we didn't change the output. I'm going to do inspect. Let's go over to console, scroll down, and you can see that the after no longer contains the HTML and the backticks at the end. So we have indeed cleaned our output correctly. So now we can go and replace that. So here I'm going to come over, and instead of doing a return like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define another object. So I'll say let out is equal to output colon AI output. And then here I'm just going to say return out. Okay, so that should take care of that. And don't worry, you don't have to do all the JSON.output and all that stuff, especially in the case where we're just returning this singular output. So that should take care of what we want. Now I'm just going to come out of this, and now I'll save and retest to make sure that our output is pristine. Fantastic. So now we no longer have that issue that we were having earlier with the backticks and the HTMLs. Let me just show you one last thing. So when we were creating this object that was going to be outputted or sent on to the next item, it was important for us to label this as output. And the reason for that is because the next node expects the input to that node to contain a key which is called output. And the value to that key is going to be the AI generated string that we want to send back to the user. Okay, so that clears that up. Now that's essentially all I wanted to cover in this video. You can utilize that coding module a lot in your n8n workflows. It is super useful, super popular, and I'll let you guys experiment with that. So thank you so much for joining me here, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello and welcome everyone. This is Dhruv Bas, and I would just like to congratulate you on finishing this course. This was a big milestone for you guys, I hope, because you got your first AI agent created. And, this AI agent is actually pretty simple, but also quite effective because it is able to take in incoming messages from a variety of sources. It could be a website. This is, directly from a consumer's phone. And then it is able to serve requests based on information that we have fed into it, as well as information that might be dynamically changing, which is like a database or an external data store that you can connect. And finally, it is able to return that information to the appropriate channel where it received it from. So this is quite powerful stuff, and I really hope you guys continue down the path of developing as an AI and automation engineer. And if you would like any resources or any help along the way, you can feel free to check out my profile or the links in the description to get access to more advanced courses, more in-depth trainings, and also be able to ask me questions directly on things that you might not understand, or just in general about what's going on in AI or automation. So thank you so much, and hopefully I see you again. Bye bye.